If you are planning to move to the United States this year on a student visa, a work visa, a visit visa, a green card, or even citizenship, I need you to stop scrolling and listen very carefully, because your entire US dream can quietly die before it even starts. Not because you did anything illegal, not because you lied, not because you don't qualify, but simply because the rules changed with the new year and nobody bothered to tell you in time. Every January, thousands of people around the world make the same tragic mistake. They send in the wrong fee, they use an old version of a form, they miss a new deadline, or they plan their life around processing times that are no longer true. And by the time they realize something is wrong, their application has already been rejected and mailed back, their priority date has slipped out of reach, or their file is trapped in a backlog that eats up another year of their life, their savings, and their mental health. So if you're watching this from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Ghana, the Philippines, Mexico, Brazil, the Middle East, or anywhere else on the planet, and your goal in the next 12 months is an F1 student visa, an H-1B work visa, a family or employment-based green card, or US citizenship, you cannot afford to start the year blind. You can't rely on a 3-year-old YouTube video, an old blog post, your cousin's WhatsApp forward, or that one immigration expert on TikTok who never shows you a single official link. The US immigration system doesn't only change when there's a big speech in Congress or a headline on CNN. It changes quietly through technical updates to forms, small increases in fees, new poverty guidelines for sponsors, policy memos from USCIS and the Department of Homeland Security, monthly movements in the Visa Bulletin, and updated rules for specific programs like H-1B, DACA, TPS, parole, and more. Many of these changes kick in around the beginning of the year, and if you don't catch them, you pay the price. Welcome back to US Move and Money, the channel where we break down US immigration and money moves in plain language, especially for international students, skilled workers, and families who don't have time to read 300 pages of legal text but still want to do things the right way. If you care about US visas, green cards, and citizenship, hit subscribe right now and turn on all notifications, because the rules that decide your future should not be a mystery. In this video, we're going to walk through the New Year immigration checklist nobody ever taught you, the specific things you must verify at the start of every year before you send a single document or pay a single dollar. We are going to talk about fees, forms, visa bulletin priority dates, work visa timelines, income and public charge rules, processing times, travel and re-entry, naturalization, temporary programs like DACA and TPS, and the one thing almost everybody underestimates, scams that explode around January when people are most motivated and most desperate. Let's start with the first silent killer of US immigration cases, USCIS fees. USCIS is allowed by law to review and change its filing fees, and when it does, the new amounts are not suggestions, they are mandatory. If you send a check, a money order, or a card payment for even a few dollars less than the required amount, USCIS is not going to call you and say, "Please send the balance." In most cases, they simply reject your entire application, bundle your forms back into an envelope, and mail them back to you. Best case, you lose weeks. Worst case, you miss a hard deadline, like the last day of your H-1B filing window, the end of your authorized stay, or your child's 21st birthday. And what makes this especially dangerous at New Year is that many people are using fee charts from last year or even older. They Google USCIS fee I-130 and click the first random website that comes up instead of the official one. They listen to a friend who filed in 2021 and assume the amount is the same. So the very first thing you should do early in the year, before you file anything, is go directly to uscis.gov, click on Forms, Type the number of your form, I-130, I-485, I-765, I-539, N-400, whatever you're planning to file. Click the official page for that form and scroll to the filing fee section. That number, on that day, on that site, is the only one that counts. If you're working with a lawyer or an agent, don't be shy to ask them, have you checked the current USCIS filing fee for this form this year? You are the one paying. You have the right to verify. The second quiet killer is out-of-date forms. USCIS doesn't just charge fees, it also regularly updates its forms. Sometimes the changes are huge, entire sections rearranged, new questions added about immigration history, fraud, security, or public charge. Sometimes it's one small checkbox or a single new line. But whether the change is big or small, the result is the same. A new edition date is printed at the bottom of the form, and after a transition period, USCIS stops accepting the old edition. If you download a form once and keep reusing that PDF for years, you are playing with fire. And again, this hits hardest around New Year, when people are dusting off old plans and finally deciding, this is the year I will apply. Think of the number of people who open their immigration forms folder, find an I-130 or I-485 or I-765 from 2022, print it, fill it, and never notice that in tiny print at the bottom it says an old edition date that USCIS no longer accepts. Months later, they get a rejection notice, maybe in a language they're not comfortable with, and their heart sinks. The rule you must follow is simple. New year, new download. Every time you are ready to start an immigration application, especially at the start of the year, go back to the official USCIS website, search your form, and download a fresh, clean copy. On the form page, you'll also see which edition dates are acceptable. Match that with what you print. Do not trust forms that agents send you on WhatsApp, PDFs that friends forward, or old files sitting on your computer.
Now let's talk about the Visa Bulletin, because for many family and employment-based immigrants, January is the month of heartbreak or hope. The Visa Bulletin is a monthly document published by the U.S. Department of State that controls when people in certain green card categories, like F2A spouses and children of green card holders, F3 married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, F4 brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens, or EB2 and EB3 workers, are allowed to actually receive a green card number. When demand is higher than the legal limit for a category, the government uses priority dates based on when your petition was filed to create a waiting line. At the start of a new year, the Visa Bulletin can move in several ways. For some categories and countries, it jumps forward, making thousands of people suddenly eligible to file for a green card or finish consular processing. For others, it freezes, no movement for months. And sometimes it does the worst thing of all, retrogression, where dates move backward and people who were current last month lose that status. If you or your family member are in any of these categories, ignoring the Visa Bulletin is like ignoring exam results you need to graduate. At New Year, you should make it a habit to open travel.state.gov, click on Visa Bulletin, choose the current month, find your preference category and your country of chargeability. For example, F4 India, F2B Mexico, EB3 Philippines, and compare the cutoff date in the chart to your priority date on your I-130 or I-140 approval notice. If the bulletin shows a date that is later than your own, you may be allowed to move forward with adjustment of status or NVC processing. If it suddenly jumps ahead close to your date, you need to start preparing documents, birth certificates, police clearances, financial evidence, so you don't waste the opportunity. If it moves backward, you need to adjust your expectations and maybe your life plans. For those of you aiming for work visas, especially the H-1B, the new year is not the time to relax and say, "We'll see in March." The H-1B cap registration period usually opens around early spring, but employers begin planning their sponsorship decisions months earlier. At the same time, USCIS can update how the lottery runs. What counts as a duplicate registration? What information is required about the employer, how fraud is detected, whether multiple job offers are allowed for the same person, and so on. If you're an international student on F1 or OPT hoping to move to H-1B this year, January is when you should be having serious conversations with your employer or potential employers. Ask them directly. Do you plan to file an H-1B petition for me this year? What information or documents do you need from me now? Make sure your resume is updated, your degree evaluation is done if needed, and your current status is clear so there are no surprises when the registration window opens. The worst feeling in the world is finding out your company forgot to register you or filled your details wrong and you never even entered the lottery. Now let's look at income and the public charge side, because this is where many family-based petitions quietly get into trouble. Every year, the U.S. government updates the federal poverty guidelines. These numbers are used to decide how much income a sponsor needs to show on the Form I-864, Affidavit of Support, so that the immigrant is not considered likely to become a public charge. A sponsor whose income was just barely enough last year may suddenly fall below the line this year because the guideline went up by a few $100s. A joint sponsor who is fine for a household of 3 may not be fine when a new baby arrives and the household becomes 4. Before you submit an I-130 package with an I-864, or before you send your financial documents to NVC, you should look up the latest I-864P, P for poverty guidelines, on the USCIS or State Department site, and verify what the current minimum income is for your household size and your state if there is a difference. Don't assume a 3-year-old YouTube tutorial has the right number. Use the latest chart. If your income is close to the minimum, consider arranging a joint sponsor early or documenting assets that may help support the case.
Processing times are another area where people get hurt by outdated expectations. Maybe your friend applied for a work permit 3 years ago and got it in 2 months, so you panic when yours takes 6. Maybe you saw a random website saying green card in 6 months, and you built your entire life plan on that timeline, quitting your job, selling property, withdrawing kids from school, only to find out that right now your local USCIS office is taking 18 months for the same type of case. New Year is a perfect time to reset your expectations with real, current data. On USCIS.gov, under Tools, there is a Check Case Processing Times option. There you can select your form, I-130, I-485, N-400, I-765, etc., and then select the specific office or service center listed on your receipt notice. The system will show you a range, like 80% of cases are completed in 10 to 18 months. This is not a guarantee, but it's a far more realistic picture than old stories or rumors.
When you know this, you can plan your life more safely. Maybe you decide not to sell your house in your home country until your green card is closer. Maybe you don't give up a stable job based on an unrealistic interview date. Maybe you budget for a longer wait so the fees and delays don't destroy you financially.
Travel and re-entry rules also become critical at the start of the year, especially for green card holders and people on temporary visas who are planning long trips back home. Many people make New Year's resolutions like, "I'll finally go home for 6 months," without understanding how US law views absences. Green card holders are expected to make the United States their primary home. If you spend more than 6 months outside in one stretch, you can be questioned at the border about whether you still reside in the US. If you spend a year or more, you may be treated as having abandoned your residency unless you have a re-entry permit or very strong evidence of ties. For students and workers, long absences can cause issues with SEVIS status, employer compliance, or visa validity. Before you book long, emotional trips for weddings, funerals, or extended stays, especially early in a new year when you're making fresh plans, talk to a qualified immigration lawyer or at least read the official guidance for your status. Sometimes the smarter move is a shorter trip or applying for a re-entry permit in advance instead of risking everything you've built. If this is the year you are finally eligible for naturalization, U.S. citizenship, New Year is when you need to do a serious self-audit. Start by counting your days outside the US in the last 3 or 5 years, depending on whether you're applying based on marriage to a US citizen or general eligibility. Did you have any trip longer than 6 months? Did you live outside for more than a year at any point while still a green card holder? Those long trips can break your continuous residence for citizenship, even if they didn't make you lose your green card. Check whether there have been any announcements about the civics test or English test, especially if you're older or have a disability and may qualify for exemptions or accommodations. Use the new year to gather the documents that always slow people down later. Tax transcripts from the IRS, certified court records if you ever had an arrest or serious ticket, marriage and divorce decrees, and records for child support if applicable. Filing an N-400 without understanding how your travel, taxes, and history look from USCIS's perspective is asking for problems. For people protected by temporary programs like DACA, TPS, humanitarian parole, or country-based protections, January is a nervous time because court decisions and policy memos can change renewal timelines or even threaten the existence of a program. If you or someone you know is in one of these categories, you cannot afford to rely only on social media for updates. Go directly to USCIS.gov and search the name of your program, plus your country, for example, TPS Haiti USCIS or DACA USCIS update. Check whether the program has been extended, redesignated, or is under litigation. Look at the precise dates for re-registration and work authorization renewal. Missing a re-registration window because you assumed they always extend it can drop you back into undocumented status overnight. And finally, we need to talk about scams because every new year they explode. When people are motivated, hopeful, and a little bit desperate, scammers see opportunity. You'll see messages like, "New U.S. amnesty law passed, apply now for guaranteed green card," or "Special 2025-2026 program, pay us and get your U.S. visa in 15 days, or "Secret White House list, register with our office before the deadline." If someone is promising a guaranteed approval, if they refuse to give you an official link from a .gov website, if they want you to send money via random wallets or untraceable apps, run. Real lawyers and accredited representatives will never guarantee a result. Real policy changes appear on official sites like USCIS.gov, travel.state.gov, congress.gov, and the Federal Register. When in doubt, ask for the link. If they can't provide it, they don't deserve your trust. So how do you actually use all of this information? I want you to sit down this week with a piece of paper or a notes app and write 3 things. First, your exact immigration goal for this year. Is it to get an F1 visa, to enter the H-1B lottery, to file a family petition, to finally adjust status, or to apply for citizenship? Second, your current situation. Are you outside the US, inside on a visa, between statuses, waiting on something? Third, list the forms and steps you know you'll need, even if you're not completely sure. Maybe I-20 plus DS-160 for students, or I-130 and I-485 for marriage, or I-140 plus labor certification for employment, or N-400 for citizenship. Then, for each item on your list, do a mini New Year check. Look up the current fee on the official site, download the latest edition of the form, check processing times, confirm if the Visa Bulletin is involved, review income guidelines if sponsoring, and think through any travel you're planning. If something feels confusing, or if your situation is complicated, like prior overstays, criminal issues, long absences, or denials, consider investing in at least one consultation with a licensed immigration attorney or a reputable nonprofit. 30 minutes of solid legal advice can save you thousands of dollars and years of heartbreak. The truth is, most people do not lose their U.S. dream because of one big dramatic law in Congress. They lose it because of quiet changes, a form updated without them noticing, a fee increased by a few dollars, a visa bulletin date that moved while they weren't looking, a deadline they thought they had more time for. If you've watched this far, you are already ahead of the majority of applicants because you care enough to understand how the system actually works. Don't let the new year pass like any other month. Use it as your reset button to clean up your information, update your documents, and tighten your plan. If this video gave you clarity, take 2 seconds to hit like. It tells YouTube that real immigration information matters and helps other people like you find it. Subscribe to US Move and Money and turn on all notifications so that every time there's a new policy, a new fee, a new travel rule, or a new opportunity, you hear it from a source that shows you the logic, not just the headline. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, what your goal is this year: student, worker, family, green card, citizenship, and which part of the process scares you the most: fees, forms, visa bulletin dates, or travel. Your questions will shape the next videos. Until then, stay informed, stay prepared, and whatever political drama you see on TV, don't give up on your future. If you are planning to move to the United States this year on a student visa, a work visa, a visit visa, a green card, or even citizenship, I need you to stop scrolling and listen very carefully, because your entire US dream can quietly die before it even starts. Not because you did anything illegal, not because you lied, not because you don't qualify, but simply because the rules changed with the new year and nobody bothered to tell you in time. Every January, thousands of people around the world make the same tragic mistake. They send in the wrong fee, they use an old version of a form, they miss a new deadline, or they plan their life around processing times that are no longer true. And by the time they realize something is wrong, their application has already been rejected and mailed back, their priority date has slipped out of reach, or their file is trapped in a backlog that eats up another year of their life, their savings, and their mental health.